Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of The Snapshot. We are your hosts. My name is Brendan Patrick, and I'm joined by none other than Marvel Snap phenom, KM Best. The Snapshot is a Marvel Snap podcast focused on the competitive side of the game, and episode 7 is all about the new Modok madness. The new season pass has dropped, and along with it, some big shakeups to the meta. So, let's get into it. All right, Cam, how was your week in Marvel Snap?
My week in Marvel Snap consisted of me reaching infinite in like 5 hours. And then not just ever since, but even climbing up, it's all bots for me. That's what my week in Marvel Snap consisted of. I'm Neo from the Matrix fighting 100 Agent Smiths. It's not the most enjoyable thing, but luckily I found a way around it. If I ever really want to seriously test something at this point, I just go into battle mode and grab some of the people that I would play in Infinite normally.
Yes.
My MMR is too high, and so that's just what I got to do until they fix the ladder. Because if I jump into ranked mode, the only thing that's good for is gold fishing. Mm-hmm. Just seeing if a deck functions on a base level. It's not good for seeing how it matches up into anything.
Yeah, that's a huge bummer. That's actually, we've talked about it before, obviously, but that's such a broken system. I know that maybe on the initial grind to Infinite, some players who end up in the high bot ELO might see that as advantageous at the beginning to get a quick Infinite, but after that, like playing all bots, being stuck in sort of Infinite 100 plus, like that totally sucks. Well, I mean, that begs the question, since you now have a lot of experience with battle mode, what are you thinking about it?
It rules.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's a really, really, really good. Like, I'm a little shocked that I enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah. Did it change up how you play at all? Like, are you?
I specifically tried to not do that. Mm-hmm. Like, we're doing testing, right? The point isn't like, oh, I beat you. The point is, what can we learn, right? So I specifically tried to not do stuff like, oh, I just won't play any cards, so I know what your cards are, and then I'll retreat on turn 5, kind of thing, in the first game of battle mode, kind of thing. I get that, but we wanted to just see how the decks matched up, and that means that you can't do stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So while I think that stuff would likely be advantageous in sort of real battle mode, I'm using it as a testing platform. So as far as its utility as a competitive thing, I honestly, I don't think I have too much experience with that. I have plenty of experience with using it, but not necessarily with using it in competition, because that's not what I'm using it for right now.
That's really interesting. Are there any other quirks that you think are sort of game theory optimal in battle mode at in a tournament setting? You talked about
just how you snap, and what you know about your opponent's deck list. I was playing against someone in battle mode yesterday, and it was just like, well, we haven't seen a She-Hulk from them, so I'm gonna snap. And then they played a She-Hulk, and it was like game 7. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, they got me.
Yeah, I had a similar experience actually pre-leader nerf. I was playing against a friend, and he hadn't played leader pretty much the entire time, and then smoked me on like a max cuber with leader. It's a funny system. I'm excited to see how that develops, and I genuinely hope that they fix the bot ELO, at least at the top end. Of course I understand the importance and the role of bots in Marvel Snap, but the idea that you will be playing mono bots at high ELO is obviously just a broken sort of symptom of that, and I genuinely hope it gets addressed, because that is a huge bummer. you're just stuck. I mean, do you think you could tank games and get out of it?
I don't even know. I've lost multiple. When I was testing Modok decks, I lost 3 8-cubers in a row, and it was still all bots. So whatever it is, I'd have to lose a lot more than that. Just straight up pumping 24 cubes into the ecosystem, and I still don't get anything but bots.
Was your grind up pretty much mostly bots as well?
Yep. It was bots and the same 5 people that I played before the reset, which begs the question, what the fuck is the point of the reset?
Yeah.
Like, we're resetting your MMR, and you still play the same exact 5 people you played at rank 270. Just you're playing them at rank 70 now. I've complained about this for a while, because one of the major issues that I had climbing up earlier seasons was I was just playing the same 5 people. we all knew what decks we were playing, and they were all pretty damn good. And that makes the climb up arbitrarily hard. It makes it really hard to do the climb up, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing the same 5 people that you were playing at rank 200, and you're playing them at rank 70, well, you have to get plus 30 on those really good people. You have to gain 300 cubes off of those really good people. And I was like, this is absolute garbage. It sucks. Why would you make the climb like this, right? And so this month I was like, screw it. I'm gonna do it early. I'm gonna push through it. I'm gonna just abuse Zabu and get it done. And I got it done. And it's like, well, this is just the opposite of how it used to be, but it's still bad, right? Like, why are the only 2 options? I play all the same people and it takes forever, or I play a bunch of bots and it takes 5 minutes.
Yep.
Why can't I just be put into why can't I just play a bunch of people who are ranked 70?
Yeah, that's sort of, I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum where I don't usually play immediately when the season drops, and I actually waited for nerfs this time, so I'm pretty much just playing the same people I've been playing for months now, to be honest. And
yeah,
they're the people that you were that you usually run into in stream because we're in the same server. People like Chet,
right,
the Human Spider. Like I'm playing against
but now
you.
I've left everyone behind.
Yep,
like it's just me now. It's like I've ascended past the norm. Like that's where I would normally be. I like last season. I took a lot of pains to keep my MMR in that range for most of the season. All right, I'll play some bad stuff as long as I'm playing humans. It's all good. And this season, I was like, no, screw it. Let's just go. Let's go get to infinite because I hate the climb. I hate that climb from 70 against the same people thing. I hate it so much. I was like, screw it. Let's go get it done. And somehow, apparently, my only 2 options are play no people or play the same people. Mm-hmm. Why are those my only 2 options? I have absolutely no idea why that is, but it is.
Yep.
Why? Good question.
I think a lot of people are in the bracket of playing the same players because I've actually seen some YouTube videos of content creators like pointing out like how hard it is like now, and it's just like it's all based off that hidden MMR. But if you get stuck in the playing the same kind of 5 or 10s, really really good players, man, it is a freaking grind from like 80
God
to 100.
forbid you end up in the educated Collins, KM Best, Leandro Leal, Human Spider, Chet bracket.
Yeah,
like that's what you have to climb against if you hit that rank.
It's a grind.
It's like that's awful. Why would you want to do that? Why would anyone be like, yeah, I would love to play those people at rank 70? That sounds dope.
Yeah, I'd love to play them at rank 100, but it does make that grind take a freaking long time. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, let's head into the news. The news is pretty much the same as last week, which is the nerfs. In case you haven't booted up the game yet, Zabu was nerfed to a 2-2, and now it discounts everything by 1. And Surfer was nerfed to a 3-2, and it now gives everything +2 instead of +3. These nerfs were massive, and they are the reason for the large shift in the metagame. A breath of fresh air. Cam, now that you've had a chance to play in the post-nerf world, what do you think? Are you enjoying the game more?
I've got an extremely funny story, which is there was a guy who used to be in that MMR bracket, like one of the people I would play. Mm-hmm. And he quit the game for like a month before Zabu even came out. He came back like yesterday, and he's like, I completely missed this Zabu card. What were they thinking? It's just like, yeah, no, it's pretty bad, man. It was a pretty bad thing to see. As far as the nerfs, yeah, I'm enjoying the game more, for sure. People are playing stuff that used to be good. Mm-hmm. The whole metagame feels like right now it revolves around getting priority and playing Arrow. I missed that. I missed my bay.
Yeah, I was gonna say that guy. I think he was playing during Deathwave and then came back, and he's like, Deathwave is still the best deck. It's like missed the whole era of just like the toxic Zabu leader shenanigans. But
I actually kind of think that there might still be some toxic stuff to get done with Zabu, but I needs a little more time in the oven. I think people gave up on Dracula Zabu too early. That's what I'll say. I think a lot of the post-nerf Zabu things I've seen is like, oh, we'll play Darkhawk and value cards. What if we just kept trying to do unfair stuff? I don't know if it works, but I think people gave up on it too early. I didn't even see anyone even trying it.
Yeah, I do echo your sentiment though. The general play pattern of games is much more enjoyable and rewarding. I think, playing arrow on your opponent playing arrow on turn 5 with priority does have like its own feel bad, but it's nothing close to being snapped on turn 2. Your opponent plays a Zabu and you don't have it, and you're
Right.
like, you stayed in just to see if they have it, and you're like, God dang it! Now you've got 50 rocks in your deck, and you're just like, oh my God, what is?
Yeah. One other like weird note. People I think are talking a lot about Shuri as a sort of deleterious force on the metagame. Like it's gonna be like, oh, that's what's gonna be what ruins the metagame. I kind of think if anything's gonna ruin this metagame, it'll be Galactus. Because that has the same dynamics as the Zabu thing, where it's like, well, it's turn 4, do the thing, or make me not do the thing. Galactus has like more reasonable counterplay, but it's like, okay, did you guess wrong on the Polaris? Pay up 2 cubes. Did you guess wrong on the arrow? Pay up 2 cubes. Was I able to fill up this lane before you could arrow stuff to it? Guess what? 2 cubes, right? So there's like Polaris is basically in all of my decks right now. Arrow is basically in all of my decks right now, just because like they give you a little bit of game in those situations where you would otherwise have absolutely no game.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Polaris, to be honest. I think it's one of the best.
Oh, she's so good. She's my favorite 3-drop.
Same.
She's my favorite 3-drop, and she has been since last season.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would often play the Maximus in the Polaris slot, and there are decks that definitely should be doing that, but sometimes I find that Polaris is just so much better because the Polaris upside is usually just so good. Like, and 3/5 is a great stat body at that. But yeah, like the Galactus,
she's costed like her thing is a downside.
I know,
right?
Yeah,
like you look at the other 3/5s, and it's like, oh, it's all things that downsides, right? Or things that are you have to make work with other cards in your deck. But her thing is just like a flat upside.
Yeah, totally agree. But yeah, let's go ahead and head into the bend and snap sections, our listener question section. If you want to get your question read out on the pod, shoot us a comment on YouTube. But this one comes from Hopia 1806. Says, what are your guys' thoughts on move decks, and what kind of utility could the game add to make them better? I personally love move, and dagger especially can get to some crazy high numbers like a 217. Your thoughts?
They're better than you think. Honestly, they are better than you think. They're just really hard to play. They're probably not like super amazing good, but if you look at if you look at the kind of decks people are playing right now, there's a lot of people moving your cards, Arrow, Magneto, Polaris, right? And so there's definitely like some room for like, I expect an Arrow here, let me just jam a Vulture kind of thing. Like I don't know exactly how it plays out, but I do think you can reasonably play move decks into some matchups. Here's the issue, though, and I have the same issue with a lot of Modok decks, which is they don't interact. What these decks are doing is just saying, I'm gonna put points on the board. I'm doing points, and then I'm playing Arrow. And, like, you might be able to do that well. But is there a better way to put points on the board and then play Arrow? Maybe. I don't know. The good move decks that I've seen leverage a lot of sort of known and unknown information, basically. Which is to say, like, am I playing Arrow or am I playing Heimdall? Can you play around both? That kind of thing, right? And so they don't tend to have like hard interaction, I would say. Like, you can't play something like Shang-Chi. So if you are up against a Shuri deck, you better just be able to get 30 points in 2 lanes, or at least one of those lanes, right? And that's like very dependent on your draws. And that's sort of the issue, where it's like, are you tall enough to ride? I'm not positive. It's better than I thought, but I think it's mostly still either a supplemental strategy or a bit of a gimmick.
I think this is kind of like a big filter for a lot of decks in Marvel Snap. Like there are so many different archetypes you can be playing, but at the end of the day, for the non-interactive decks, they do come down to a lot of just point slam, and it often tends to be that there's just one deck that kind of wins out as the deck that point slams the best, and there's not really a compelling reason to not be playing that deck if you're looking to point slam. Right. It's kind of like in other games when you're looking at a meta and there's like an aggro deck, there's often just one best aggro aggro deck. There's the aggro deck that goes the fastest. And it's like, if you're playing the second best aggro deck, it's like, why? Why are you doing that? Because you're playing a linear game plan and trying to put be as aggressive as possible, or as in Marvel Snap, put as many stats on the board as possible. And there's no reason to be playing second best. I'm not sure if move totally falls into that category, but that is why move was effectively kind of like, in my opinion, kind of deleted from the game when Zabu and Surfer were unnerfed, because the point slam potential of decks was so high that these sort of more niche archetypes just could not compete at all. With that said, and the nerfs coming, potentially move is a viable deck, and I feel like it's not far from a single card upgrade. Yeah, like it's not far from being a potentially top deck, I think.
I think it's not so much an issue of the point output it can have, which is actually very high, right? It's an issue of doing it reliably.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can absolutely go crazy with some move cards, and you will absolutely rob people when you do. But are you going to be able to do that reliably? Are you going to be able to do that without getting Shang-Chi'd? Are you going to be able to do that better than another deck that has counterplay to the Shang-Chi and stuff? And are you going to be able to do that? Like, why would you not just be playing like, Shuri Red Skull, which runs armor and Cosmo to prevent them Shang-Chiing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have the issue with the move deck is you devote all 12 cards to being a move deck, and that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah. Honestly, it seems like in Marvel Snap, it's often correct to not commit 12 cards to doing an individual strategy, because there are a few cards in certain slots that shine so far above the rest, like the Polaris at a 3/5 with a quote-unquote downside that is just an upside.
Not a downside. Yeah.
So yeah, with the thing about with the move decks, we can talk about the ceiling all day long, and we've seen it, right? You've played against a move deck that's hit you with some ridiculous stats, and just totally run away with the game. But the floor on the move deck is often pretty low, and they're open to things like Shang-Chi, Cosmo. These things can be pretty devastating. So Move is potentially a good archetype. I think that it just needs the correct deck list, right? I don't think committing 12, just putting, searching the keyword move, like, move in Marvel Snap and just building 12 cards that have that. I don't think that's correct. And, maybe it's just one more card away from being a top deck, or it could be now and people just haven't found the correct list.
The thing move is good at is being unpredictable, which is super valuable. But is it valuable enough to make your whole deck unpredictable, or is it valuable enough to, like, I don't know, put like one move card in a good deck and trick people with it, right? Like, you see decks that are playing like Heimdall in the ramp deck just to get people, just to scam people. And I almost think that's a more compelling use of most of the move cards.
Yeah, I think move. It's funny because move is also somewhat seen as like the big brain deck, and I've even heard the term like the Heimdall math, because it can get quite confusing. So I think it has an appeal, right? Because it's a deck that I think that has a bit of a higher skill ceiling that you can put time into, and people sort of identify.
Absolutely can.
Yeah,
and like, it's absolutely a powerful thing to be doing if you are drawing the cards in the right order.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question of, is there something that makes it easier on you that's comparably powerful and, isn't 50-50ing every Shang-Chi with a Heimdall? You know what I mean? Like, you popped off. You have your 13 power vulture. You better hope they don't guess where it's going.
Yeah.
It's like that always sucks, right? Because it's like, you invest with move, you invest so heavily in vulture, Human Torch, dagger, that if one of them gets blown up, you're usually in trouble. Like, if they're big enough to be relevant in the game, they're also big enough to get blown up.
Do you think that move is a little bit sensitive to location RNG as well?
Honestly, like, not particularly. No, I actually think move benefits from location RNG, because there are so many locations that just close off, right? There are so many locations in the game right now that are just like, you cannot play cards here, and move is really good on those locations. I think that's actually the biggest upside of the deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right.
It's like, oh, you got a Plunder Castle? Ah, sorry, buddy. Oh, you got a Sanctum Sanctorum? I win.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's like, it's hard to get your combos off, but you get a freely won lane a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably not a lot of hoser locations. Like, I'm thinking more of like Space Throne, Rickety Bridge, stuff like that. But
oh no, those are bad.
Yeah, those are bad. I mean, every deck.
Don't get me wrong.
Every deck has.
But those are bad for
like
everybody.
That, yeah.
Yeah, like what? The only decks those are good for are like Doc Ock decks.
Yeah.
I also think move 100% cold to Galactus unless you can arrow their Galactus. You are just absolutely cold to that shit. And that's tough.
Yeah, have you been what has your success rate been against Galactus now that your decks are running both Polaris and Arrow into them?
I have not seen enough Galactus. You know my issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have the robots.
Yeah, I feel like
the guy I play, the one guy I regularly play, is still playing Darkhawk Zabu.
Yeah.
So like as far as testing, we can run the Galactus test. I suspect what would happen would be whenever they are able to fill up a lane and prevent me from arrowing, they will win. Whenever I am able to fill up a lane, whenever they are unable to fill up a lane and I can arrow their shit, I will win.
Yeah. Arrow seems like it just seems so good against Galactus, especially because usually the decks it's in are winning priority. But let's go ahead and head into the main topic. Before that, yeah, if you want to get your question read out on next week's blog, shoot us a comment on YouTube, and we'll get that queued up. But for the main topic, we're just talking about the new meta, Modok Madness. Again, the nerfs came in. They sort of changed everything around, and we're seeing a lot of deck diversity right now. We might converge onto a sort of quote-unquote best deck soon enough. Might see some more, I don't know, less diversity on the ladder, but for now, it does seem quite variable. Cam, I just want to start it off with, what do you think is the best deck in the game right now?
No idea. Sorry, no idea. Not going to give you an answer. Don't know. I think it's too early for anyone to say this is the best deck because, like I've had a lot of success with the Sarah Tech deck, right? I post the Sarah Tech deck and then suddenly Dara posts the Deathwave deck and, Sarah Tech's not very good into that. And so suddenly then I'm like, okay, what beats Deathwave? We have this like leech armor move control deck, right? That's pretty good into Deathwave. I did a couple battle modes against a really good player on Deathwave and won both of them on this. It's actually going to be a YouTube video, probably by the time this podcast is out.
Yeah.
And it's a like things are still in flux. I actually have like a couple Zabu decks in the oven that I don't know how they match up into stuff, but I really like them.
Yeah.
There's like other builds of Sarah. There's a bunch of like Mr. Negative decks popping up around here. There's a ton of Modok lists, which is actually originally what I built the Leech deck for, was just like, I'm going to leech these Modok players. That was the whole idea. It was like, all right, look, if you're going to play a card that discards your hand on turn 5, I'm going to make sure you don't get any of those cards in your hand back. That was the whole point.
Let's start off with the Sarah Tech deck, because I have it pulled up here. Just walk me through some of the decisions. Obviously, you kept Zabu in this deck. We're running Enchantress Shang-Chi, kind of the classic interaction. Any other cards you want to point out, play patterns? And you talked a little bit about your preying upon, but just dive a little bit deeper into that.
I don't know. I think this deck is pretty weak into specifically the card Wave on turn 5. Because it's not exactly great at getting priority, and it's not exactly great at being ahead of the Deathwave decks, which are kind of the things you need to do because they're just going to arrow your shit out there. You have these like Mysterio things where you can try to fill up your lanes in that matchup. It's a little iffy. Basically, this deck is built for an open metagame, right? It's very unfocused. That's one of the things you'll notice, right? And that's why something like Deathwave can beat it and why you'd have to modify it if you wanted to compete in that matchup, right? Because this deck is built for an open metagame. We're playing Enchantress. If nobody's playing, like the Enchantress here is a nod to, like, I expect people to play Mr. Negative, right? Like, it's just like, I want to have that base covered. I don't want to lose to some shit. But if nobody's playing anything that Enchantress hits, you don't need the player, right? The Killmonger here is a nod to people playing Sunspot. It's a nod to people might be trying Zoo again. But if nobody's doing that, you don't need to do it, right? This is a generic shell, yeah? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just about being generic. It is about having answers to everything you might see. You as a metagame evolves, you take a shell like this and you customize it to what you actually do see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like we've sort of been through this metagame evolution before as well, where the Sarah deck was doing decently well, then the Deathwave deck came onto the scene. did extremely well, sort of took over the meta, and then of course, I think the leader stuff came after that. But now with leader gone, we now have Deathwave sort of cementing its slot. But yeah, I think this is also just a great early ladder deck because people are trying out many things.
It just gets shit done. Like if people are still experimenting, this will fuck up whatever they're experimenting with. That's pretty much it, right? Like you want to try something? Sorry, dude. Shouldn't have fucking tried things.
Yeah, and like you said, wave is definitely tough for this deck. So I want to go on to this deck you were playing pretty recently on stream, the one you talked about to counter Deathwave Mover. Did you ever switch out that Magneto slot? Because I remember when I tuned in, I heard verbatim as soon as it turned, Magneto sucks. I was like,
he kind of does. It's Magneto is sort of there because like I guess it's just like what else would be there. Like what else? Like every time I try to switch it out, because what really gets me with this is, I wonder if I could take out Magneto and a 3 and try to fit in Zabu and Shuri and Vision, and I just like I can't figure out how to make it work. I've been dancing around it the whole time, basically. Mm-hmm. I've been dancing around like, okay, how do I fit Shuri in here? And I just haven't figured out a good way to do it. I wonder if maybe I'm just supposed to play Vision straight up or something. I don't really know, but I have been trying to figure it out. This is as close as I've gotten, where it's just like, I can't figure out what I lose to here.
Yeah, how important? So this is pretty close to a deck list that existed. Sort of.
Yeah, it's just Leech Leader.
Exactly, Leech Leader, what I quoted as the best deck, and then that sort of morphed into the Shuri Vision stuff. So, I mean, the biggest question is how important.
Right, but now, like the issue is that morphed into the Shuri Vision stuff because the stuff that you were leeching wasn't around it much anymore, right? Like the stuff that you were leeching was, remember that got developed when Lamentus 1 was the featured location. Mm-hmm. So the stuff that you were leeching was everyone's deaths, and then after that Lamentus 1 location went away, no one was playing deaths anymore. And so it was like, okay, how do we win the mirror? We win the mirror with Shuri Vision, right? You get your big points down before the leader shit happens. And so you end up here, we're back here with the Leech because of Modok, because people are playing Death again. People are doing things where it's like, I'm going to cheat you with the hand. And like, you think this is bad against, Red Skull decks or whatever. It's actually not. Those decks are pretty reliant on Arnim Zola and Taskmaster to make a second big guy. And that card always comes out on 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like it's actually like kind of reasonable into that. So when I tested it against Shuri, I was shocked. I was basically like, when I tested this, I was shocked by how good Shuri was against the Red Skull deck, or how good Leech was against the Red Skull decks, and how medium Leech was against Deathwave. Leech was not an important part of beating Deathwave, basically ever. What beat Deathwave was just like, the armor, Polaris your Bucky to the armor lane, White Queen your death, and be ahead and arrow your shit. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, which is pretty much a classic.
That's what beat Deathwave. Yeah, we didn't even need the Leech for that. It was weird. It was really weird. Like, there's still room to be messing around with this, right? Because I don't know how many Leech games I won against Deathwave. I don't think it was that many. It really felt like it was more just, armor, Polaris, White Queen, Mr. Fantastic makes me ahead on all these lanes, play arrow after you wave, you die. It was just that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, Deathwave is also one of those decks. It's just like, it's quite predictable as well. Shuri's a card that, and Marvel Snap, that I feel like it's just a cut above the rest. It just feels a little bit pushed, and I just always want to find a way to put it in my deck, but sometimes, yeah, it can be awkward going into your turn 5 and you're like considering leeching.
I couldn't figure out a way to do it.
Shuri Arrow is so good, and Shuri Vision is so good, and even, Shuri into, I don't know, White Queen is totally fine. I mean, the card is just so freaking strong at this point that I wouldn't be surprised to see an evolution to incorporate it. But I mean, I'm so happy to see Thor played again. Thor is just it's a fun card, but was completely deleted off playability due to the Korg freaking rock slide stuff.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Is Thor actually like the card you really desperately want to see? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I Thor is like my he's very much like the flex slot in this deck. Sorry, I hate to say it, but I think he's very much the flex slot in this deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the slots are they. I don't know the slots in this deck. They always feel they've been feeling kind of tight since this ever was kind of rose to popularity. But this this idea of Scorpion, Armor, Lizard, Polaris, White Queen, Arrow. It's like you really can't be changing that. Those cards are just so good in this meta. They're just like arguably the best drops at those respective resource values. Let's go. Let's look at. I mean, speaking of the Red Skull deck, let's just circle back to Natty Light. Have you played this at all since the season drop? How do you think this deck is doing?
I tested Mover against it actually. I tested the deck, just the Leech control deck against it. I will say this: I ended up losing that set on like it went down to the final game, and I lost it on basically like a coin flip. And it was like, oh well. I talked to the guy I was testing against afterwards, and he was like, "Yeah, that basically just felt like an even set. Like, as far as I can tell, the just having a control deck and being a control deck into that is actually just fine. It's just totally fine." One thing I will say though is there's this bit that's worth investigating, which is I'm not sure that deck is the most optimized for the matchup into the deck I was playing, which is to say, I think there are ways for the Shuri deck to give the deck I'm playing trouble. Things like cutting Doc Ock, maybe, and just relying more heavily on cards like Cosmo and Armor to protect yourself from my interaction rather than, Doc Ocking. Because Doc Ock, basically, every time he was played in the matchup, there's so many Shang-Chi's out now, it feels like every time you play a Doc Ock, he's just 50-50 to kill himself. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good way to lose. And one of the games we actually lost there was when the Doc Ock pulled every card but Shang-Chi from my hand. It's like, oh, they're just so much better than me. What an incredibly skillful play. The most skillful Doc Ock of all time. Like, that's the kind of thing that like you got to do that to beat the Shang-Chi, right? If you're not playing Cosmo in the deck, yeah? Mm-hmm. But if you are playing Cosmo in the deck, you become a lot more linear, right? If you're playing Cosmo, everyone knows what you're doing, right? It's just very obvious what's happening. And, let's say your opponent has an Armor in another lane, right? You can't do the Zola thing anymore. You can't, like, it's a very weird and predictable deck, such that I think people, once they get experience against it, will stop being so mad about it.
Yeah, I'm honestly not a fan of the Zola plan, like, at all, especially into an Arrow heavy meta. It just feels it's ultra predictable, and it just there's so much counterplay to it. The Taskmaster is being sort of your top end curve on 6, with potentially also dropping the Titania and another lane that's full. I'm a much bigger fan of that, especially with all the armors running around too. Like, I mean, Arnim Zola just feels like it is not made for this life at this point.
Yeah, Zola has never been a card that I like very much.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I want to hop into this Deathwave deck. I mean, looks pretty stock standard. Do you see the Squirrel Girl, which I'm not sure if you were playing that sort of back in the day?
I actually think this list is built very smartly. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are like, why are you playing Squirrel Girl? Why are you playing Iceman? Because the only thing that matters is having priority. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. You play Squirrel Girl, which lets you actually do your Carnage bullshit, right? People play like Armor and Cosmo to stop you, but like really, Armor and Cosmo are about stopping Bucky, not about stopping you getting to the death thing. And Squirrel Girl takes priority and then dies and pumps your death. It's good. It's good.
Mm-hmm. Anything
right now? I think it's smart.
Do you do you want to run the listeners through just like some particular lines with this deck? I mean, I'll start off with it's often wave on 5 wave on 5. They're playing She-Hulk and Death on 6. I mean, that's something I guess people might not notice immediately, but anything else? I mean, we do see the Shang-Chi or the Shang-Chi make it into
stuff
that
you'll have to. Here's some real stuff, right? Because people are going to talk about the hood, and I will tell you why in the play patterns it's not as ideal, right? Mm-hmm. Because with She-Hulk in the deck, you need to float 2 energy on the turn you play wave, right? And that's normally the turn when you'd actually be able to play the demon. Because if you're playing the demon on 1, first of all, it's probably getting Cosmoed or armored at some point, right? If you're playing the demon on Like you end up wanting to play the demon a little bit late, right? So you play the demon on like 4 with a deathlock, so it always gets blown up, that kind of thing. Yeah. But then you actually can't play it on 5 if you're going to play the She-Hulk, because in order for Wave She-Hulk to work, you have to be floating 2 energy to bring She-Hulk to a discounted -2, which then when Wave sets her to 4 will make her cost 2, so you can play She-Hulk and another card. And that's kind of the whole thing your deck is built around, and you're not going to sacrifice that just to play a demon. So then you're asking the question, why did I even play this card that has -2 power? Right? That like just not dealing with that at all is, I think, makes the deck way easier to manage and much more like straightforward, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a super powerful deck right now, and I mean it's probably vying for top deck in the meta at this point. I want to bring up these negative Panther Zabus. You mentioned running into it a little bit. Do you think this is like a legit force to be reckoned with? I pulled this list from Howling Mind, specifically from Marvel Snap Zone. So not sure if it's exactly how you would build it, but what are your thoughts on the Mr. Negative Zabu? Is it too high variance? Do you feel like you kind of just have to draw the card? I mean, what are your
I
thoughts?
actually played it a little bit, and I will say that I think the best part about it was the Panther stuff. The Panther stuff was actually just awesome when it worked. The Panther stuff was super cool, but it kind of has this issue of like, that doesn't always work.
Yeah.
That's not always a thing that works for me, dude. My personal opinion is that if you are a degenerate combo addict, this could be a deck that you love. If you are someone who wants to have a lot of snap equity, this could be a deck that you love. I do think that if people just leave when you Mr. Negative snap them, you're probably never winning. You're probably going negative cubes. Because there's a lot more games where that doesn't happen than it does. I think there are a lot of promising Mr. Negative Zabu Psylocke lists right now. I'm getting over my hatred of Psylocke slowly. But you know, we're working on it. We're working on it. I don't think this is what I would play.
Yeah, my experience has been pretty much universally negative with this list over the past few months. Whenever it's creeped up, but if you like drawing 05 Iron Mans, this is definitely the list from you. You can do some powerful stuff, but yeah, the consistency just isn't quite there for me. I'm gonna go to one more list before we get into the Modok list. It's just gonna be a pool 3 list. This is from Freddy Babes. Yeah, I mean it's just a value list. I haven't played it yet, so I can't totally vouch for its sort of efficacy, but it does look quite legit. Like you're playing the Calling Wing just to get extra value in the Swarm, get the multiple O3s, and it's just a nice curve. You see the Polaris Maximus, so I recommend giving it a try. I like to give everybody an option because we do talk about a lot of the sort of higher end lists that maybe have Series 5 cards in them or are a bit hard to get. So this one is very approachable if you're looking for something sort of early pool 3 to be playing. But with that, let's head on to Modok. Give me your first your impression on Modok so far as the season pass card, and have you had a chance to experiment with it?
I think it's a pretty powerful card, honestly. The issue is powerful. It is powerful, but the decks it goes into are fundamentally inconsistent in a way that really bothers me.
The hell is it consistent? What?
I think that I have not played a Modok list that sort of reliably does the thing enough. The power ceiling is so high. And I think it's the kind of thing that like weirdly might see more success in battle mode than anywhere else because people will disrespect it and you probably will be able to 8-cube them. But I just don't think that it's the kind of thing that I could reliably bring to ladder where it's a grind, a large sample size thing, and also where there's this human element of when your deck just doesn't fucking work, you get mad at it. So it makes it hard for me to recommend it for anyone who wants to play ladder. But as far as its actual power, it's strong as shit. When Modok is doing the thing, it is legitimately very good.
Yeah. The
It's just the issue is you don't want to be running like here's the issue. You don't want to be running other discard cards unless they're targeted discards because you don't ever want to discard your Modok. But if you're not running these other discards beyond Colleen Wing and Lady Sif and you don't draw your Modok, it's like, oh shit, what does my deck even do?
Yeah, I have the Modok Hella Invis list pulled up right now, and you talked about 8-cubing people. It's funny because it's possible that the best way to 8-cube like very good players is to just play a deck where it's just random on the line. Nobody knows who's winning that last turn because the Hella is just putting things in effectively random lanes. But yeah, I mean, Hella decks for me have always been not fun. This one is a bit mitigated by that because it is playing the Invisible Woman to try to protect you a little bit. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, you kind of need to draw the card. If you don't draw the card, you're going to be in a bad spot. And at that, like you said, it's still a bit of RNG from there. All right.
Yeah. I like when you do the thing with a Modok deck, it's legitimately powerful. The card itself being 8 power is really good.
Mm-hmm.
It was powerful enough that I had like I said, I built a deck just to play Leech into it, right? I was like, all right, I respect what this deck is doing enough to like I'm gonna build a Leech deck now. I think this deck is powerful enough for me to not want to play Shuri Vision and that to instead want to play Leech, right? That's kind of crazy, isn't it? Like, isn't that like a really like I'm really showing respect to that deck?
Yeah.
And then it just turns out Leech is good. So there is that. Like Leech is just kind of a good card. But other than that, it's I think Modok is powerful. I really do. If someone ever solves it, I would love to play it, but I don't want a bunch of people to come to me and be like, I solved Modok and just show me the same Modok lists, right? Like I don't have a lot of respect for any of the ones out there right now. They're all fine, but none of them are elite. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
They're totally fine, but
Do you think a bit of a tangent here? Do you think Leech is the most irritating card in Marvel Snap?
Frankly, I'm a Leech enjoyer now.
Leech enjoyer. Wow, that's you really swap sides there. Let's go on to my favorite. This is my favorite Modok list, the Dracula discard Modok. It does run Lockjaw, which I have run this list without it, but it's really consistent for a discard deck. And effectively, what you're doing on turn 6.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. For a discard.
A discard deck. I think that this deck
is
like
for a deck.
It's honestly, it's consistent. I don't think it's not as consistent as the decks that I like to play. Like I often avoid.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, but I'm a bit allergic to like the high variance list, even though they might have higher cube equity in a game like Marvel Snap. I stray away from them, and it's probably to a fault. But with this list specifically, like this list I felt like was playable before Modok, and effectively what you're doing on turn 5 is if you draw the Modok, you're keeping these swarms in hand. You've discarded the swarm to Colleen Wing or something else if you've gotten a bit lucky and you have extras in hand. And on turn 6, what Modok's doing is discarding all the superfluous cards in your hand that you don't want to be playing. It discards your Apocalypse to buff it, and it discards your swarms to duplicate it. And on turn 6, you're playing out all of your swarms, and then your Dracula is going to basically do the Apocalypse thing. And it's relatively consistent and powerful at that. I think that a lot of players, like this deck is actually more predictable than you think, but your opponents will very, very often disrespect the swarms, and like they just won't really do the math when it's...
Right, like how much of that is just because it's new, right?
I think it's new, and a lot of people don't play the list as well.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think the swarm stuff, the swarm Dracula stuff is like very predictable, right? Like you can pretty much guarantee like they have X amount of swarms in hand. They're going to be playing them to Y lanes, and the Dracula is going to be 16 power because that's what the Apocalypse is at. But a lot of people just I think that they kind of let that go, and they're like, we'll see what the Dracula discards. Like maybe it discards something. It's like, no, it's always going to be discarding the Apocalypse. But it's okay. I think this would be the list I would play if I was someone was like, you got to play a Modok list.
I agree that it would be the list I would play if you had to play a Modok list. There are a couple like individual card choices that I am not sure about, or at least that kind of like weird me out in that sense, where it's like, okay, so this is kind of the thing I was talking about, right? where it's like you have Hellcow and Swordmaster in here, and then you'll have these games where you just draw like Moon Knight, Lady Sif, Hellcow, Dracula, Swordmaster, and you're like, what the fuck is this deck supposed to do?
Yeah, you're playing a 6/8 Apocalypse on turn 6. You're like, oh my god.
Right, you're just leaving those games, right? Yeah. Like it's just bad.
100%. I mean, 100% you're leaving those games, and I think that you maybe, I guess, like myself, try to kind of trend towards lists that give you game when you don't draw the most powerful thing you can be doing. But there's like a lot of other lists in Marvel Snap. It's like, I want to do this thing, and the cube system allows me to sort of play games, leave games that I don't get it, and snap and try to 8-cube and 4-cube people when I do get it. And that's a play pattern that I personally don't enjoy.
Like, what I'm saying is, like, you have to be willing to risk that.
100%.
If you want to play a deck like this, you have to be like, all right, I am going to get those cubes back. Because there's like, I don't know what the percentage is, ballpark it, 20% of games you don't get to play. Which means you have to be making that 20% up in the games you do get to play. And I kind of just don't think these decks are strong enough to make that 20% up.
Yeah. Man, I think that's a great argument. And it's probably correct. That's why we don't see more of them. All right, but that's going to close it out for the list. Any sort of closing thoughts, KM, sort of on the meta, where you expect it to go, things you're experimenting with over the next week or coming weeks?
I just put up my video on the mover deck, where it's we're bringing the leech back. So I'm not sure if that will impact the metagame or not. I have no idea, but boy, he seemed pretty damn good when I played him. And I had very little trouble with, I won't say very little trouble. I was able to beat Deathwave. You know? That's really all I'll say. I don't think it's like 100% or anything like that. I don't think anything's 100% in any game. I think generally, this is a good point. Tangentially, I'm really getting sidetracked here, but people tend to think of card game matchups as way more lopsided than they actually are. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, oh, we crushed this matchup, and it's like 57%. It's like, that is actually what crushing a matchup is in the context of a card game, right? If you're like a 50% winner in a matchup, you're fucking God, right? That's actually amazing. You're in a great spot in that matchup, but it also means you lose close to half the time. So I think generally people need to accept that a little bit more. Just a note.
Yes, you are 100% correct, and that is hilariously apparent in other card games as well, where you have a deck that's extremely favored to another deck, and it's 55-45. But that's
like this is really common in Magic, where it's just like this deck is amazing against the field, and what amazing against the field means is like 54%. And it's like, you know what, that actually is amazing, right? If you have a 54% win rate before you even play a card, that's insane. That's unbelievable. That's so good. But also, it's still only 54%. That's like fundamentally what we do in card games is try to give ourselves as big of an edge as possible, right? But that edge is only apparent over longer sample sizes, and so you like be careful like of drawing conclusions from a video. There's a great quote from I think Andrew Ellenbogen where it says, "The art of competitive Magic is the art of generalizing from a sample size that's not big enough to actually support your theories," or something like that. Like you just have to guess a lot of the time. You have to be like, okay, this makes sense here. This is how it looked in our testing. This is how I feel it should go, and then combine those into a thesis. Yeah. And I think that's true in a lot of card games.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we did get a review this week. We got a pretty funny one. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this out. This is from CKEF, and it's a 5-star review in Apple Podcast. Thank you so much for that. But they say, I've long played other TCGs, replacing Pokemon with Magic the Gathering, then Magic the Gathering with Flesh and Blood. With a new kid, I haven't had the time to go to my LGS and play and needed something simple and quick to get my TCG fixed. So this past week, I started playing Marvel Snap. After figuring things out, I wanted to find a podcast I could listen to at work to get all the info about different builds as well as the evolving meta.
Whoa. Are you telling me you're doing time theft?
Yeah.
With our podcast, we are not responsible for this person's time.
Gonna have to.
They go to jail.
Yeah, we're gonna have to report CKEF.
Yeah, we're reporting you to HR.
Outed. It says the snapshot has offered me just that. There are many positives to this podcast and a few negatives. Oh, both of which I'll describe below. The pros: very informative and entertaining discussions each week. Getting to learn from KM Best has definitely helped me grow as I continue this journey through the game, and his banter with Brendan is certainly fun to listen to. The con: Brendan is a very knowledgeable player, but I do really want to learn about his two.
No. Do I really?
Yeah, do I really want to learn 2 TCGs from a severely cursed player? I know he said it's unlikely his curse would rub off on anyone else, especially considering it seems to deal with fab stream matches, but I've had some pretty devastating turn 6 losses since I started listening. Coincidence? Doubt it. All that said,
it's
10-10 would recommend.
Not a coincidence.
There's a rumor about me being a cursed player, but what
do you mean rumor?
It's absolutely not true.
It's facts.
Absolutely not true.
He's cursed. He will never win anything.
Dude, it is absolutely fake news that I've lost every match on stream. I have won a couple, but people just they love the narrative.
I have never seen it.
Well,
I've never seen you win a Flesh and Blood match on stream. Please don't ask me how many Flesh and Blood matches I've ever watched.
Yeah, enough.
But I have never seen it.
Well, I can't lose on stream anymore because I'm commentating. So there we go.
I mean, that's the move, right? That's actually the biggest dub you can take is a steady paycheck out of a card game career. Woof, that's the move.
The best thing about Flesh and Blood is if you play it long enough is going to be the people, the community, your friends, the experience, and anything that maximizes that is absolutely the move. So I agree with you, and I think that I am extremely
that's
fortunate.
cope. Hold on. It's okay that I'm cursed because people get to make jokes about it. That maximizes the experience for you.
No. I'm just saying, like, I agree with you that commentating is like such a. I'm saying I'm saying commentating is like such a fortunate thing to be in because. Yeah, I'll take whatever line that just gets me there.
No, absolutely, I'm with you. But I thought for a second you were saying like it's okay that I have this running gag because people get to make jokes about it, and that brings the community closer together. Like this is a Disney movie.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt at all. It's like got that smiling, crying face with the mask on.
Yeah, it's the smiling with the smug Wojak over the crying Wojak.
Yeah. Guys, it's just a meme. I didn't practice at all, just months in advance. Anyway, if you want to get your review read out on the podcast, go to ratethispodcast.com/snapshot. It helps us out so much, so we appreciate everybody who's done that so far.
We promise we won't report you to HR.
Yeah, we won't report you to HR, and the funnier the better. Anyway, there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/@the_snapshot. Hit that like and subscribe while you're there. We're close to 1,000 subscribers, and it's actually relevant now because apparently to join Marvel Snap's sort of content creator program, you just need 1K subs. And I think once we get there, we can start doing some giveaways for season pass stuff and bundles, all of that. I think that's where you unlock that at this point. Anyway, I'm on Twitter, BrendanAPG. Cam is at KMBestMS, and he's also streaming Marvel Snap every single day. You might not be able to see him run up to Infinite because he did do that almost at during
already there.
Yeah, I think he did. There. You did at least 20% of it during the podcast, I believe, last week.
Yeah, I did. I only told Brendan after. I was like, "Hey, Brendan, you realize I've been playing Snap this whole time?" And he was like, "Oh man, you were actually so much more engaging." It's like, "Oh wow, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much."
We should do this more often. What's your stream schedule for people that want to check you out?
6 p.m. Eastern. Every weekday. On the weekends, it's usually a little bit earlier because I know there are people. The reason my schedule is 6 p.m. Eastern is because that's when I get home from work. So I get home from work and then I go stream. I don't have work on the weekends, thank God. And that is pretty straightforwardly because people in the on other parts of the world might want to, watch my stream. I know I get a lot of people coming from like Korea and Europe, and they prefer an earlier stream time. So my weekend streams tend to be earlier. There's not really a set time for them. Usually it's like 3 or so, but or so is kind of a big modifier on that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, check them out. We're going to be doing a mailbag episode next week because I will be out in Austin that weekend. So if you want to get a question read out for the mailbag, you need to be submitting those to the YouTube comments below as soon as possible, because we're going to record maybe early this week, not sure. And we're also going to put out a sort of a call to action for questions on the CamBest Discord. So join that Discord if you're not in it yet. But anyway, we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.